Today, we're going to be reviewing the God of High School Manhwa / webtoon. Now, this is a new series I am starting where I am going to be ranking each different manga slash manhwa I read and give them a solid and proper review. With that being said, let's get straight into it, into the plot of the God of High School. Now, with each category, I'm going to give them a rating out of 10, and then we're obviously going to get the average at the end, which is going to give us our score, and is going to give us our ranking of everything I've read. Now, this is the only thing I have finished as of now, so this series is going to be a lot more spread out than the anime review one. I've seen a lot of anime. This is the first thing I've read. I'm currently reading other things right now, but this is the first one I finished. But let's get started with plot. And with the plot, I thought it was very good. I think the biggest complaint about the plot is that sometimes there's just a little too much going on. For me, it doesn't really matter, but I think if you told somebody to read The God of High School, they would get to a point where it's like there's just so much going on that it's kind of hard to, I don't want to say follow, it's just like there's too much going on at one time, right? I think that's the only complaint, is that when they do the big wars and stuff, there's like everybody there, all these different powers, all these different things happening, and there could be a lot going on. So for plot, I give it a 9 out of 10 because I still think the plot is fantastic. It's pretty much about Jin Mori. The plot changes per arc, to be honest, so I can't really explain it, but yeah, the plot is very solid. I give it a 9 out of 10. There's just a little much that happens. Next, we have characters, and for me to go in-depth on the characters, unlike I was able to on my TikTok, I think it has some of the best female character work out of any, media I've read. The females in The God of High School are very impactful, so important, and have such good character. You just don't see them treated as well by other creators and stuff. I'm not saying they're the best, but they're some of the best I've seen, some of the best female characters ever, written in my opinion, and a lot of the other characters, the male characters as well, are also fantastic. I think the only complaint I guess I would have about the characters is that some of the gods don't really have explanations, but there are so many of them that it's kind of hard to go through all of them. But for characters, I gave it a 10 out of 10. I mean, they are fantastic. Next, we have the main character, who is Jin Mori. Jin Mori, aka the Monkey King, aka the Stone Monkey, which kind of feels like a slur if you've read it, so I'm not sure if I should really say that. But he's obviously the GOAT, and if you didn't tell by this point, there is going to be spoilers in here because we do have to talk about the ending later and stuff, but I'll try not to spoil as much as possible, right? But for the main character, for Jin Mori, I love Jin Mori. He is great, and I honestly think he's Goku with a lot more depth, so I'm going to give main character Jin Mori a 10 out of 10. Next, we have antagonist, and antagonists for the most part are really solid. I just think sometimes they kind of fluctuate, I guess, because I'm not gonna lie, I didn't really like the sage. I can't remember what's his name, the Jade Emperor. I didn't really care for him as a villain. Mandioke, he was decent as a villain. I don't know, my words lost me right there. But then Jagal Take, I don't know really how to say it. He was a great villain, and obviously Mubong Park, fantastic as well. A lot of the gods were very good too. So I gave Antagonist a 9 out of 10 just because I wasn't the biggest fan of the Jade Emperor, or Nox in its entirety, I guess, until later on. So yeah, I would say 9 out of 10 for the Antagonist. Next, we have depth, and it's not perfect in depth, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of depth in the God of High School. I just wish there were a little more for how long it is. If you don't know, it's about 570 chapters, and each chapter is over 100 pages at least, but most of them are over 150, and there could have just been more depth, just being honest, with that amount. But I did still think it was very good, and like I said, some of the characters are some of the best written, females especially. Ymira, honestly, is one of the best female characters in anything, so I'm still going to give it a 9 out of 10. The depth was very good, it just, there could have been more. Next, we have plot twist, and man, this show's kind of built off plot twists. Now, some of them can be predictable, towards the end, I knew that the fight between Mubong and Jin Mori would come down to hand-to-hand combat. Well, it didn't come down to it. It was over before then, but I knew they were going to fight, just martial arts, right? Because that's what it's going to boil down to. So some of them you can kind of predict, but there are so many plot twists, honestly. And the whole start of Part 6 is a massive plot twist, which it was a plot twist for the author as well. He even mentioned he wasn't planning on doing the Part 6 or whatever, which Part 6 is really Part 2 of the whole thing because it's over 300 chapters itself, but that's besides the point. There were a lot of plot twists, a lot were very good, so I'm going to give plot twist a 10 out of 10. Next up for the fights, obviously the fights are fantastic if you've even seen the anime and not the manhwa or the webtoon, whatever you want to call it, because there's technically both. But the fights are honestly beautiful. Even in like, they draw so well that like you can see each individual movement. I'm currently reading another like fighting manga right now, and it's not drawn nearly as well. Like, I can see what's going on in God of High School at all times. I'm never confused about what's going on, and especially you learn a lot of the basic attacks early, so you kind of get the flow of everything later on. So the fights are just done incredibly well. I would say 10 out of 10 for the fights, and I would also like to add there's not really much else like it. The closest thing fighting wise to the God of High School would probably be Dragon Ball, but they definitely have their differences, but that would probably be the next closest. Next, we have emotion, and this is probably one of the weaker points of the story. It definitely has emotion at times, but I feel like a lot of the emotion doesn't really come until part 5. Part 5 and part 6 have a lot of the emotion in them, and there's a lot. It's very, very good. But the earlier parts, like 1 through 4, there's not much emotion there, to be honest, other than hype. But the hype is still good, obviously, but you don't really ever feel sad. You don't really ever feel like really much anything else, or anger or anything like that towards anyone. But it's just a pretty good story up until then. Then the emotion really kicks in. So for that reason, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10, because there is a lot, especially in the later parts. And like I said, part 6 is literally half of the story. So it's not like, you know, only 2 parts out of 6. The 6th part is longer than the first 5 put together. So there is a lot of emotion. It's just there could have definitely been more. Next, we have pacing. This is the other like struggling part. I'm going to give pacing an 8 out of 10. Now this one's going to be pretty quick going over. It's just because in the part 6, like I said, part 6 is pretty much longer than the first 5. I don't think that's technically true, but it's literally like half of the story. And part 6 just goes on for a very long time, and there does feel like some parts where it's being dragged a little bit, and they show a lot of like replay stuff going on. It was still fantastic, don't get me wrong. So yeah, I did give it an 8 out of 10, but there are some parts where it does feel like it's dragging. Next, we have enjoyment. Pretty obvious what the score is going to be here. I gave it, well, is it obvious? No, maybe not. But I gave it a 10 out of 10. I loved the God of High School. It was great. It was the first manga / manhwa I've ever finished. I have read others, but a lot of the other ones I've read are still ongoing, so I can't finish them. But this was the first finished one I read, and I loved it. I thought it was great, so I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. Next, we have peaks. Obviously, if the enjoyment's 10 out of 10, and you got a show like the God of High School, which is pretty much all about peaks, the peaks are going to be 10 out of 10. They're awesome. They're great. Not really much to say there. A lot of awesome moments. Next, we have world building. Now, the world building in God of High School is actually pretty solid. It's better than most shows and most manga. I feel like a lot of the stuff is explained very, very well. But I'm not going to give it a 10 out of 10. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10 because the world is pretty much too big. And that's not really a complaint if it went into everything, but there just quite simply was not enough time in the story to go into all the different realms. There's like 9 different realms, and they kind of explain them, but we don't really know about the other 8 realms or whatever, the other 7 realms, however many there are. I don't really remember off the top of my head. So we have a lot of it still unexplained. Now, like I said, there is a lot of it also explained, so that's why it's still a 9 out of 10, because it's great. And you could argue a 10 out of 10 because the other realms don't really matter, but they are there and we don't really know about them, so I'd give it a 9 out of 10. Next, we have art. Now, the art is phenomenal. I love it. I think it's great, but there are definitely better ones, so I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Now, I know what some of you may be thinking. If you love it, how are you giving it a 9 out of 10? If you think it's great, just because they're like, it can't really compare to like JoJo's or One Punch Man, even Fairy Tail, like that art is phenomenal. It definitely has better art than what I'm reading right now, which I'm not going to spoil because I'll probably finish it soon and then we'll get that out. But yeah, the art is very good. It is better than a lot of them, which is why I gave it a 9 out of 10, but there are ones that are just that level ahead of it, so that's why it's getting a 9 out of 10. And lastly, we move on to ending. I only have one complaint about the ending, and it's not that there's, I don't want to say closure, but like, Jin Mori kind of turns into a deadbeat. I'm not really a big fan of that. I also find it kind of weird. Now, if you haven't read this, you know, you're not going to understand what I'm saying, but trust me, it's not that weird. He does marry his sister, which is kind of weird. Now, they're not related, and they didn't even really grow up together, to be honest. But yeah, he does end up marrying his sister, which is weird. You know, and I'm not going to spoil like how everything actually ended. That part was great. This is more like the epilogue stuff, pretty much. So if you don't want to include the epilogue, I'd give it a 10 out of 10. with the epilogue included, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10 because some weird stuff does happen, and he does kind of abandon his family and friends, even though he works so hard to be with them, and I get he has to, but yeah, I kind of wish he didn't. And then overall, when you round up all the scores, we get a solid 8.7 for The God of High School. I wish it was higher because I loved it, but it's not. We got an 8.7, and I don't know how. We only had 2 that were under 9. I don't know how it's an 8.7, but it is. So yeah, I enjoyed The God of High School. If you've read The God of High School, let me know your opinions on it now or in the comments, you know, right? But I'm trying to finish my next manga, and you know what, I'll tell you what it is. I'm reading Holy Land. It's pretty decent. I'm at like chapter 25, and I started it last night, so you know, I'm making good progress in it. It's pretty solid. But yeah, that's what I would say. I'd probably say Holy Land's probably going to be the next one up, and I'm not sure what we'll do after that. I will take suggestions, but I do have a list already of what I want to read, so I will get to the suggestions you guys give me afterwards. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like, subscribe, and we'll have another review next Thursday. Most likely going to be an anime review, unless if I finish Holy Land like that quickly, and I'm not sure I will. So I will see you guys. Well, Sunday we got a really good video. Trust me. I'm yapping now, but Sunday's really good video. Thursday or Tuesday, then we'll have another tier list Tuesday, and then Thursday we'll have another anime review. I hope to see y'all there. Peace.